some more mistakes that my students have been making. Number one, Harry Potter is in the science fiction genre, and I don't think it's worth to read. So there are two mistakes here. The first one is a vocabulary mistake. Harry Potter is not science fiction. It's fantasy. Yeah, it's in the fantasy genre. We say fantasy when we're dealing with elves and wizards and goblins and all of those imaginary creatures, and especially anything to do with magic will be fantasy usually. Science fiction is usually about the future. It's usually about perhaps spacecraft, other planets, that kind of thing. That's science fiction. I'm reading Dune at the moment by Frank Herbert. I think it's Frank Herbert, and it is fantastic, and it is certainly science fiction. I'd say it's kind of historical science fiction, Dune, just because it has a lot of historical references, but nonetheless it's science fiction for sure. It has futuristic devices and equipment in the story, which means it's certainly science fiction. Harry Potter is based nowadays, not in the future and not really in the past, but it's complete fantasy. You know, obviously there's no such thing as a wizard or magic. Magic isn't real, and that's fantasy. Fantasy is for things that aren't real. Science fiction could be real in 20 years, in 50 years, in 100 years. Okay, and so I would disagree that Harry Potter is science fiction, it's fantasy. It's in the fantasy genre, and I don't think it's worth reading, not to read. Now, I have a lot of sympathy for anyone making this mistake, just because that is an adjective. And I tell all my students, adjective plus 2 plus infinitive, yeah? It's difficult to pass this exam. It's easy to do this exercise. It's hard to agree with what you say. Yeah, hard, difficult, easy, they're all adjectives, and 99% of the time it's adjective plus 2 plus infinitive. But worth is an exception, and you just got to remember it's worth and gerund. I think this mistake may have come up in a previous class, and so it's good to repeat these mistakes which come up again and again and again. So number 2, I try to entertain myself with reading books. Okay, I think that there are at least 2 mistakes in this sentence. I try to entertain myself with books is one way. In fact, I think there are 2 ways we can correct this. We can say, I try to entertain myself with books. Yeah, I don't like the with reading books. We don't usually use a gerund here, and it doesn't sound right to me. I try to entertain myself with books is great. Or I try to entertain myself by reading books. Sounds more natural to my ear. Yeah, entertain myself by reading books. I would say that's a second option. But you don't, I mean, what else do you do with a book other than read it? You don't need to use the word reading here. And so I try to entertain myself with books is excellent. But if you insist on using reading, I don't like with reading books. I prefer by reading books. But if you want my opinion on the best answer, it's just remove the reading, and then you've got a good answer. I try to entertain myself with books, because you do entertain yourself with something, but it's a noun usually rather than a gerund. Okay, I don't like the with plus gerund, but by reading books sounds okay to me. I wouldn't have corrected that. Okay, number 3, I had a bunch of free time. Now, we say a bunch of flowers. That's the most common collocation. A bunch of flowers, a bunch of roses.